He wasn't supposed to make it. Too small for heavyweight, too quiet for stardom, too humble for the spotlight. But Evander Holyfield didn't care about odds. He cared about greatness. From the poverty of Atlanta to Olympic bronze, from cruiserweight king to four-time heavyweight champion, the real deal built a legacy on heart, grit, and faith. He fought giants, he beat legends, and he did it all without ever backing down. But glory came with a price. He lost fortunes, suffered in silence, and kept fighting long after the world begged him to stop. This is the story of boxing's iron-willed warrior, the man who never ducked a challenge, never made excuses, and never, ever quit. This is the rise, fall, and redemption of Evander Holyfield. Before we start, subscribe the channel to support our growth. Thank you. Before the bright lights and championship belts, before the wars with Tyson and Bowe, Evander Holyfield was just a skinny kid in Atlanta, small in size, but massive in heart. Born on October 19, 1962, in Atmore, Alabama, Holyfield was the youngest of 9 children. Raised by a single mother in the rough neighborhoods of Atlanta, Evander grew up surrounded by poverty, violence, and doubt. The odds were never in his favor. But Holyfield didn't want sympathy. He wanted purpose. His mother, Annie Laura, was a spiritual, no-nonsense woman who believed in hard work and self-respect. She kept the house clean, the kids in line, and Holyfield's dreams alive. If you start something, she told him, you finish it. That sentence would follow him into every ring, every round, every war. Evander found boxing at just 7 years old through the Boys and Girls Club. Not because he wanted to be a star, but because he wanted to be better, more focused, more disciplined. Coaches quickly saw something rare. A kid who never got tired, never gave up, and never lost his composure. By 13, he was already winning tournaments. By 15, he declared his goal, become the heavyweight champion of the world. There was just one problem. He was tiny. At 16, he barely made 5'10", and fought at light middleweight. But he trained like he was going to fight giants. Road work in the Georgia heat, sparring rounds with bigger men, weight training, prayer, patience, purpose. By the time he reached 18, Holyfield had made the U.S. amateur boxing team. And in 1984, he qualified for the Olympics in Los Angeles, the moment that would shift his life forever. But even on the cusp of greatness, heartbreak came calling. Holyfield didn't just want a medal, he wanted history. But what happened in the Olympic ring would leave a scar deeper than any punch. The 1984 Los Angeles Olympics were supposed to be Holyfield's coming-out party, and they were, just not in the way anyone expected. Fighting in the light heavyweight division, he stormed through the early rounds with surgical precision. He fought like a man possessed, clean, calculated, relentless. Everything was going perfectly. Until the semifinal against Kevin Barry of New Zealand. In the second round, Holyfield threw a blistering combination, ending with a left hook that dropped Barry to the canvas. It should have been a knockout win, but instead, the referee stepped in, not to count Barry out, but to disqualify Holyfield. Why? Because he threw the final punch after the ref had said, break. A split-second call. A devastating one. Holyfield's Olympic dream was shattered in a moment. No gold, no final. Just a bronze medal and a cloud of controversy. Even Barry admitted later that the DQ was a tragedy and that Holyfield deserved better. But Holyfield didn't whine, didn't protest. He stood tall, accepted the medal, and said nothing. The world saw sportsmanship, but inside, a fire was lit, and it wouldn't go out for decades. He turned professional in 1984, the same year as Mike Tyson. But while Tyson's rise was meteoric and violent, Holyfield's was slow and methodical. He started at cruiserweight, where the paychecks were smaller, the spotlight dimmer, and the respect nearly non-existent. But that didn't bother him. He wasn't here for fame. He was here to finish what he started. From 1985 to 1988, he tore through the cruiserweight division like a storm. No drama, no antics, just victories. He took the WBA title, then the IBF. In 1988, he beat Carlos de Leon to become the first undisputed cruiserweight champion in history. But even after dominating a weight class, he still wasn't satisfied, because the world didn't care about cruiserweights. Heavyweight was where legends were made. Heavyweight was Ali, Frazier, Foreman. So Holyfield did the unthinkable. He moved up. He was undersized, underpowered, and underestimated. But the real deal was coming, and the heavyweights had no idea what was waiting. The late 80s belonged to Mike Tyson. The heavyweight division was a battlefield. But Tyson wasn't just winning, he was obliterating. One-round knockouts, broken jaws, fighters terrified before the bell even rang. And in the middle of all this chaos, Evander Holyfield, the cruiserweight, announced his arrival. Critics laughed. He was too small. He didn't have the punch. He didn't have the jaw. He'd get destroyed. But Holyfield didn't flinch. He knew his power would come with time. What couldn't be built in the weight room was already in his chest, heart. His first heavyweight fights were statements. He knocked out James Tillis in 5, then Pinklon Thomas, then Michael Dokes. A violent 10-round classic that showed the world Holyfield wasn't just a former cruiserweight. He was a problem. While Tyson continued his reign of terror, Holyfield stayed the patient predator. He became the #1 contender, and the boxing world circled the inevitable clash. Holyfield versus Tyson. Good versus evil. Discipline versus destruction. But boxing never follows the script. In February 1990, Mike Tyson stepped into the ring with 42-1 underdog Buster Douglas and lost. It was the biggest upset in sports history, and suddenly, the belts belonged to Douglas. Just like that, the path cleared. Holyfield didn't hesitate. That October, he stepped into the ring with Buster Douglas for the undisputed heavyweight title. It took just 3 rounds. Douglas, bloated and sluggish, didn't stand a chance. Holyfield knocked him out cold with a vicious right hand. The skinny kid from Atlanta was now the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. He had done it. But the world still wasn't convinced. They said he got lucky, that Douglas was out of shape, that he hadn't beaten Tyson. So, Holyfield did what he always did. He fought. He defended his title against every name thrown at him. George Foreman, Burt Cooper, Larry Holmes. He went to war, won decisions, 8 punches, outlasted legends. But nothing could prepare him for what came next. A trilogy that would define him, brutalize him, immortalize him. Riddick Bowe was coming, and Holyfield was about to enter the most punishing chapter of his life. By 1992, Evander Holyfield had defended his heavyweight titles against aging legends and dangerous contenders. But many still doubted him. The ghost of Mike Tyson's absence lingered. Critics said Holyfield hadn't faced a prime heavyweight. They wanted blood, and they got it, in the form of a 6.5 wrecking ball from Brooklyn named Riddick Bowe. Bowe was young, undefeated, and mean. He came in with a chip on his shoulder and bombs in both hands. At 235 pounds, he was nearly 30 pounds heavier than Holyfield, and that weight translated into raw, terrifying power. On November 13, 1992, Holyfield and Bowe clashed at the Thomas & Mack Center in Las Vegas. What followed was one of the greatest heavyweight fights in boxing history, a 12-round war with no breaks, no breathing room, no mercy. The first half was even, both men trading, slipping, adjusting. Then came round 10, a round that still echoes in boxing folklore. Bowe came forward like a freight train, landing combinations that would have stopped most men. Holyfield staggered, buckled, but refused to go down. Bleeding, exhausted, he punched back. The crowd was on its feet. Commentators screamed. Holyfield lost a unanimous decision that night, but no one left questioning his heart. A year later, in the rematch, Holyfield adjusted. He came in lighter, faster, more tactical. Bowe was still dangerous, but this time, Evander outboxed him, outthought him, outlasted him. He regained the heavyweight crown in a fight interrupted by the infamous Fan Man, who crash-landed into the ring on a parachute. Even in chaos, Holyfield stayed composed. He was a warrior, and now a 2-time heavyweight champion. But the toll was building. Every war took something from him. A sliver of speed, a fraction of timing, a touch of clarity. And just when he thought the storm had passed, it circled back. In 1995, Bowe and Holyfield fought their final chapter. It was supposed to be Holyfield's redemption, but this time, his body betrayed him. He entered with a shoulder injury, fought bravely for 6 rounds, then collapsed from sheer exhaustion. TKO. Bowe won the trilogy. Still, the rivalry had forged Holyfield's myth. No one questioned him now. He had been through hell and stayed on his feet. But the biggest ghost of them all was about to return. Mike Tyson was back, and Holyfield wasn't done yet. By 1996, the heavyweight landscape had shifted again. Mike Tyson had returned from prison, faster, stronger, angrier. He regained the WBA title in typical Tyson fashion. Brutal knockouts, early finishes. The public was ravenous, and the whispers returned. Tyson versus Holyfield. They were supposed to fight in 1991, but injuries, legal battles, and chaos delayed it. Now, 5 years later, the fight finally materialized. Most saw it as a sacrifice. Holyfield was 34, coming off health scares and wars. Tyson was 30 and knocking out everyone. The oddsmakers made Holyfield a 25-1 underdog, but Evander didn't believe in odds. He believed in faith, preparation, and pain tolerance. He entered that ring in November 1996 with calm eyes and a cold plan. From round one, it was clear Tyson hadn't prepared for this version of Holyfield. He expected a scared fighter. Instead, he met a granite chin and relentless counters. Holyfield bullied him inside, pushed him back, clinched smartly, and made Tyson uncomfortable. In round 6, Holyfield dropped Tyson with a crisp combination. The crowd erupted. In round 11, he finished the job, TKO. The world was stunned. Tyson was silent. And Evander Holyfield, written off for years, stood once again as heavyweight champion of the world. The rematch came quickly, June 1997. The hype was insane, and the fight became one of the most infamous in sports history. After a tough first round, Tyson began unraveling. Holyfield's head movement, clinching, and timing frustrated him. Then, in round 3, Tyson snapped. He bit Holyfield's ear. Not once, but twice. Blood poured. Confusion reigned. Tyson was disqualified. The moment went viral before viral existed. But through it all, Holyfield stayed composed. He didn't retaliate, didn't gloat, just raised his hands and walked away. The man who had once been doubted was now immortal. But immortality doesn't pay the bills. And even legends have to fight the calendar. Father Time was catching up fast. In 1999, Holyfield faced the next mountain, Lennox Lewis, a tactical, towering Brit with a jab like a piston and a champion's patience. Their first fight in March ended in one of boxing's greatest robberies. Despite Lewis outlanding and outboxing Holyfield in nearly every round, the judges called it a draw. Fans were furious. The media smelled corruption. The rematch came in November. This time, justice prevailed. Lewis boxed clean, fought smart, and took Holyfield's titles by unanimous decision. Holyfield didn't protest. He knew the truth. He had lost, but he had lost like a man. And in the process, he earned Lewis's respect and the crowd's. The new millennium wasn't kind. Holyfield's reflexes slowed. His timing wavered, but his heart still iron. He fought John Ruiz 3 times in strange, sluggish affairs. Won 1, lost 1, drew 1. Then came Hasim Rahman, Chris Bird, James Toney, names younger, faster, sharper. He was aging in real time, but he kept going. Not for legacy, for life. The money was drying up. Lavish spending, poor investments, bad business deals. He bought a 109-room mansion in Georgia, supported over 10 children, trusted too many people. By 2008, the mansion was foreclosed. Estimated career earnings of over $200 million gone. He was broke and still fighting. Holyfield's decline wasn't just physical, it was existential. A man who'd won it all was now scraping for paychecks. But still, he showed up, trained hard, fought clean, because that's what he always did. He had nothing left to prove. But the gloves stayed on, and the damage was only just beginning. By 2004, Evander Holyfield was 42 years old. Most fighters by then had already written their farewell letters, their legacies safely sealed behind glass and memory. But Holyfield? He was still lacing up gloves, still doing road work at dawn, still believing he could win. But belief has a cost. His next fights were painful to watch. Against Larry Donald, he was outclassed over 12 quiet rounds. The crowd didn't boo, they winced. The commissions started stepping in. New York suspended his license. Doctors whispered concerns, but Holyfield wouldn't stop. In his mind, he wasn't declining. He was misunderstood. "They say I'm too old," he told reporters, "but age is just a number. The fire's still there." In 2007, at 44 years old, he challenged Sultan Ibragimov for the WBO heavyweight title in Russia. He fought with all the muscle memory he had left. He even won a few rounds, but he couldn't pull the trigger. He lost on points. It was quiet, anticlimactic, the opposite of everything Holyfield had once symbolized, yet still he returned. 2008, Zurich. He faced Nikolai Valuev, a 7-foot-tall, 320-pound Russian who looked like he belonged in a Marvel movie. And somehow, Holyfield made it competitive. Some even thought he won, but the judges didn't agree. Another loss, another slip, and still no retirement. Holyfield fought until 2011, his final pro fight at 48 years old against Brian Nielsen in Denmark. He won by TKO in round 10. It was quiet, almost surreal. No title, no network, no massive crowd, but it was his win. His way. He walked away with his hand raised. Still, he never officially retired. Because how does a warrior stop being a warrior? The gloves were off, but the silence that followed was deafening. And now, the battle wasn't with fists. It was with legacy. Retirement, unofficial or not, is never simple for a fighter. Especially not for one like Holyfield, who spent over 3 decades chasing respect, redemption, and righteousness. For most of his life, the roar of the crowd was his compass. Now, all he had was the echo. In the years that followed his last fight, Holyfield became a ghost in the boxing world, occasionally appearing at events, giving interviews, smiling for photos, but never quite there. The eyes had dimmed, the fire had faded, and the battles had left scars, deeper than even he would admit. The damage wasn't just physical, it was financial, emotional, spiritual. His mansion was gone, so were most of his earnings. Friends turned distant, business ventures failed. At one point, his house was auctioned to pay off over $10 million in debts. Divorce settlements piled up. Child support lawsuits hit the press. This was the man who once stood atop the world, now watching it from a distance. But Holyfield never lost his sense of purpose. Faith kept him anchored. He turned to Christianity more publicly. He spoke at churches, prisons, youth programs. He told his story not as a tragedy, but as a testimony. Still, he carried regret. In interviews, he admitted staying too long. He admitted trusting the wrong people. But what he never regretted, not once, was fighting. Fighting made me who I am, he said. It gave me everything, and it took everything, and I accept that. He eventually reconciled with Mike Tyson, not just publicly, but emotionally. The man who bit his ear, they became friends, appeared on shows together, smiled, hugged, laughed. Time, it seems, is the only opponent neither could defeat, and both finally respected. And when asked if he'd change anything, he always said the same thing. I did what I was born to do. The fighting was over, but what would the world remember? The titles or the toll? Evander Holyfield's legacy isn't neat. It's not wrapped in a perfect bow or celebrated with universal applause. But maybe that's the point, because Holyfield didn't live a storybook life. He lived a fighter's life. He's the only man to become undisputed cruiserweight and undisputed heavyweight champion, the only 4-time heavyweight world champ. He fought and beat legends: Tyson, Foreman, Holmes, Bowe, Douglas, Moorer. He never ducked anyone. He never folded. His fights were wars. His chin was granite. His heart was biblical. And yet, when people talk about the greatest heavyweights of all time, his name sometimes gets left out. He doesn't have the myth of Ali, the fear of Tyson, or the poetry of Joe Louis. But Holyfield had something no one else did. He had consistency under fire. He was the underdog who kept winning, the smaller man who beat giants, the quiet kid who became king. His style wasn't flashy. It was effective. His footwork was subtle. His hands, always working. He could brawl, he could box. And when it got ugly, he never blinked. But more than all of that, Holyfield's greatness came from his will. The way he refused to give up, the way he kept coming forward, the way he honored his mother's words with every jab and slip and clinch. If you start something, you finish it. He started in the projects. He finished in the Hall of Fame. Today, younger fans may only know him from memes, from viral interviews, or old Tyson clips. But those who watched him know the truth. Holyfield was real. Holyfield was relentless. Holyfield was the real deal. In a sport defined by violence, Evander Holyfield stood for something quieter, something rare. He didn't just fight with fists. He fought with faith, with discipline, with a heart that refused to quit, even when the body begged for mercy. He wasn't the loudest, wasn't the flashiest. He didn't dance, didn't duck, didn't play the villain. He just showed up, again and again. And when the bell rang, he gave everything. He gave us wars that left our jaws drop, moments that made history books tremble. But he also gave us grace, in victory and in defeat. Yes, the world moved on. The sport evolved. The names changed. But somewhere in the DNA of every fighter who laces up gloves today, there's a little bit of Holyfield. Not the style, not the stats, but the spirit. Because in the end, the story of Evander Holyfield isn't just about belts or bite marks or bankruptcies. It's about a man who started as nothing and left the ring as everything. The real deal, forever.